Cool beans. All right. So I'm going to move on to the third one, guys. Or fourth one. This is the fourth one now. See what y'all think it is. Y'all can work in groups. Yes. So you can go to the bathroom after Alexis, but you have to wait for them to get done. Oh, thank you. Where's this? All right. So this one, you see how, did you write it down already? Oh, you did good. I saw this and wasn't sure. Are you and Yulia doing it together? Okay, make sure to put her name on that one too so that y'all can. Awesome. Make sure if you're working in a group and you're going to turn in one card that you have the names of everybody that's working in that group on that card. And don't write somebody's name on the card if they're not helping you. You have every right to not write their name if they're not actually discussing it, okay? Who needs more time with this one? We're going to go over, oh, is everything okay? Oh gosh.
It's not even letting me hover the mouse over it.
You know, we're just going to reset this and see what happens. Wait, did that fix it? No, it did not. I feel like I'm an IT major. Oh, that was not pretty. Okay, cool. I feel like I'm an IT major sometimes. Because you're helping me with this, we're going to go over this. You can write the stuff down on the card. Did I give you a card yet?
No.
Got you. But for the rest of them, like from here on, just write down what compositional rule you believe that they're following. Oh, they're up here. All right, y'all ready to move on to the next one? This is also a Nearpod. Can you read that from there? VQFE5? Okay. Yes.
Can I use the, where is it? This?
Yeah, you can use those, for sure. This isn't a test, this is just a review. So if you want to use those, you can.
Great.
What number is this?
I think this is 5. Does anybody need more time? Are we good? All right, moving on to the next one. Do y'all need help with this one? It's okay. All right, so we're going to talk about it, but let's talk about this one. So he's obviously inside a tree, right? So which one of these did we talk about where the subject, which is the boy, has something that's surrounding them?
Framing.
Framing.
Fruit.
Mm-hmm. That's right here. See?
Fruit?
Yeah.
Oh.
Look at you. Hello. Alexis, go ahead. All right, Billy. While she's gone, you got to try to help out your team. Here, you can look through here. You can use her computer. And look, this is day 1, this is day 2, and you can flip through these to try to find it, okay? So what did we say this one was?
Framing.
Okay, so start with number 6 and then put framing.
Wait, what do I put number 6?
Just write number 6.
Right here?
Yeah. and then put framing next to it, because you called it. VQFE5.
I guess good.
You did.
Cause I see like a little bit of frame drawing and stuff with the tree.
Exactly. So framing,
So that's just what we need to look for.
yeah. So framing is using something that's within the image to frame the subject.
Go inside the tree.
Boy inside a tree. Are y'all ready? What about this one? So let's talk about this one. What do you see in this one?
Kids.
Okay, so,
Touching lockers.
all right, so what do the lockers create?
Are they lockers?
Well, they're like, it's like a mailbox. So do you see these? What is that?
Lines.
Lines. So what over here, let's look at this. What over here would be that?
There's two leading lines.
Leading lines, because you're leading to the subject, because the girls are the subject, right? So you're leading to the subject. You could also do,
9.
that would be,
9 out of 21.
well, it's picture 7.
Oh.
That's just slides. We're not doing 21. We're actually almost done. So leading lines would be 1. And look at these 2 words and tell me if you think it's that as well.
Rhythm.
Rhythm and repetition.
No, I think it's rhythm.
It's rhythm.
Is the thing long?
They're long.
They're aligned together.
Yeah. So if they're repeating, what would that be?
Rhythm.
Rhythm? That could be, but it could also be.
No. When they're repeating, it's repetition.
There you go. Are y'all ready?
Wait, that's the second one?
That's, yeah, there's 2 technically. Well, there's 2 in most of these, but as long as you write 1 down, that's all I need. All right, let's talk about this one. I will say this image comes out a little blurrier on your screen than it's meant to. The flower is supposed to be in focus, and the background is blurry. The flower is in focus, the background is blurry. Yeah.
What the petals classify as a pattern?
I would say so. Yeah, you could do that. There's an argument to be made for that. It's one of those that I would want you to describe why you feel that way, but I can see where that argument comes from, for sure. I can help you. What are you struggling with?
What's this one?
I'm not just going to tell you. I can lead you to it, though.
Lead me to.
Okay, so what do you notice about the flower that's different than the background?
This one, the flower's bright and this is dark.
Okay, so what would that be? If they're so different, it starts with a C.
Contrast.
Mm-hmm. She's right. She has it pulled up.
Contrast, period.
Is that what you tell him? Y'all silly. What you got? Hi, how y'all doing? Good, very good. Look at that. Contrast, negative space. Look at you guys go. All right, y'all ready for the next one? Doggo on a bridge. This is one of my favorite pictures. All right, so let's look at this one.
It's good option to do with lines too.
Yeah, so maybe it's that one again. So let's write that one down.
Happy.
It's not a compositional rule, but he is happy. He does cause happiness. So if I were to split this right down the middle there, would it be the same on both sides?
Yes.
So what, there's a word about in here that means the same on both sides. What is that?
Symmetric.
Yeah, symmetrical, so that would be
Balance.
balance.
I'm not sure.
What is he saying it is?
Leading lines.
He might be right. Uh-oh. This one has several, Cheeky, so there's a few that it can be.
See it?
That might be one of them. There might be others. All right, who needs more time with this one? You need more time?
Yes.
Okay, I'll give y'all another like 10 or 15 seconds.
Is the camera on?
Yeah. It's recording.
Y'all cooked.
What? I'm cooked?
All of them.
Why? Why? They're not cooked.
Yeah, where is it?
It's over there. Smile and wave.
At the end, if you guys want, you can say like hi to WLBN TV and we can use it for our newscast.
I would love that, yes. Anybody that wants to can totally do that. As a thank you for letting me use their amazing camera equipment and recording stuff.
Very expensive.
Yeah, not even close to what I'm going to be showing you today.
My teacher would kill me if something happened to that camera.
Yes. She's being very generous by letting us use it.
Yeah, thank you, teacher. You not see my face though?
No one is going to see your face. It's going to be okay. I mean, I will see your face when I have to rewatch this whole thing, but. All right, what about this one?
White.
So it's a white background, or pretty much white. We're just going to consider it white for the sake of,
Is there a test?
is there a what? How is it framing? Well, I thought I heard something too. So is there anything other than the air that is framing all around it, all around it?
Oh,
Because framing would be like up top too.
water.
So there's the water on the bottom.
Cloud.
That's an island.
Oh. That look like somewhere in Japan.
Huh?
That look like somewhere in Japan.
It could very well be in Japan. But,
You might
so there's a white background. What color is the tree?
gray.
Like dark gray? So would you say that there's a big difference between the background and the subject matter?
I think so.
So which one would that be on here? Which one would that be?
Visual weight,
Visual weight or, and also,
contrast.
there you go.
So that's for 9.
That would be for 9. Or I think that's 10. All right. We're going back to the beginning, guys. All right. So we're back at the beginning. Somebody tell me what they think this one is. What is it?
Contrast.
Contrast, very good. This subject's coat and their whole outfit is very dark compared to the white background, so that is contrast. Anybody else? What? Isolation. It's not one we talked about, but true. So she is over all by herself, which creates a lot of what over here?
Space.
Negative space?
That's okay.
Empty space, negative space, you know, they're about the same. So there's a lot of empty space over here, right? And the empty space over here brings some interest back to her. Is there another one this follows because of her positioning within the frame?
Maybe rule of thirds?
Yes, rule of thirds. So remember rule of thirds. Oh my gosh. Technology. All right, so rule of thirds, if you remember, is breaking your canvas up into 3 quadrants, both vertically and horizontally. Our subject is perfectly within that far left quadrant. Yes? Huh? So Alexis is going, I think Toha was going, or somebody. Who else?
Me.
Yeah, we probably need to write the names on the board, guys. If you need to go to the bathroom, write your name on the board. You can also get away with having somebody with rule of thirds can be actually on the lines or on the intersection points, remember. All right, is there anything else on this one? Or do you think we're good to go? I think we're pretty good. So what about this one? Anybody got any ideas? Should I start calling on people?
Rule of thirds.
Rule of thirds, it is rule of thirds. If you break this up, he is pretty much centered right in the middle. Anything else? Yes?
Maybe asymmetry, because if you divide it in half, it's not identical, but it's similar. And then also leading lines, because the bridge kind of like leads you to the person.
Very good. So symmetry, Jasmine makes a good point. This up here is not quite the same as that mountain over there, right? So it makes it to where it's a little asymmetrical, but also you have your leading lines. These 2 lines are really, really strong coming through here, pointing straight at him. But you also have the lines from the mountains coming down and leading directly to him at the end of the pier. So this is also leading lines. So you could say this is balance and leading lines. What about this one? What you got, Landon? What'd you write down for this one? Let him answer. Or try. What'd you write down for this one? What is the tunnel doing?
Framing.
Framing? Good. Thank you. So this is framing. Remember that framing is anything that is inside the picture that is framing the subject matter, right? It's not a physical frame around the image, but it's something within the image itself that frames it. So let's also talk about with inside the frame. If I were to draw a line, basically right down the middle of this, is this balanced? Is it symmetrical?
Wait, no.
No, not really, right? So you notice if you were looking on both sides, you have over here, you have the statue, which is nice. Then over here you have the Eiffel Tower, which is bigger, but you also have this, which is carrying some visual weight as well. So this is right side heavy. So when I talk about visual weight, this is what I mean. This feels heavy on this side of the composition. You could say that some of this empty space over here is taking up like some visual weight, but this is really, because there's a lot of detail. You even have people over here. You have darker shadows over here as well. Everything is leading your eye in this direction. Now, is this wrong? If I were to click all this out, is this still a good image? I think so. I think it's a good image. I think that they could have possibly lined it up better, but we don't know all the circumstances. We also don't know if they were trying to do this on purpose. Yes?
Could it be like perspective or leading line?
It could be perspective for sure, because the Eiffel Tower's much bigger than this person, right? Or much bigger than this statue. But it doesn't look that much bigger in this perspective. And with the leading lines,
Because like the railing, like where the people are,
so you're meaning the railings like here?
and it's like leading to the tower, because like the corner is like
So like here? I think you could have an argument for leading lines, yeah. I think you could have an argument for leading lines right there. That's not one I've heard. Very good. Anybody else? All right, cool. Good job, guys. What about this one? Yes?
Definitely like contrast because the blue and the orange are complementing colors.
Yeah. So that would also be what?
Color theory.
Color theory. So contrast, color theory, both of those are really good. I also had one student talk about negative space with this, which you could use. Because if there was a bunch of stuff in the background, like even clouds, this wouldn't be as strong of a composition, right? Because it would take away. Now, one of the things I want to mention is you notice how the sky in this picture is almost overly blue, right? It's almost unnaturally blue. This is somebody that took this image and bumped up the saturation in the image to be able to make the color contrast more prominent, right? They didn't push it to the point that it is actually unnatural or weird or hurts your eyes, but you can tell that the sky is a little off. They probably did this on purpose because they wanted to highlight it, but keep in mind that when you're taking photos of the real world, your eyes see things a lot different than the camera does. So to make a photo the way you remember it, a lot of times you have to bump up the saturation a few percentage points just to get it to where you remember it. That's not cheating. Like you could still probably use like the whole hashtag no filter if you just bumped up the saturation a little bit, because that is something that naturally occurs. Now, if you pull it this extreme, you better have a reason, like this, to be able to pull it, because there's nothing else going on and this is part of their composition. All right, what about this one? Anybody?
I think this one could be the golden spiral.
Mm-hmm.
If you spiral it around, it eventually lands on the girl who's sitting on the bench.
Exactly. So this is, and I don't know if it's the exact, because I can't draw the Fibonacci sequence perfect, but she has a good point. Something kind of like that, right? And what other rule follows the Fibonacci sequence almost exactly? What? Rule of thirds. The difference is when you have rule of thirds encompasses a lot more than just what the Fibonacci sequence has to offer. The Fibonacci sequence basically, if your subject is in one of the corners of your thirds, right? I would look at to see if it's also Fibonacci sequence. It's going to be hard to have it in the middle, but if it's in the corners and it's also rule of thirds, there's a good chance that it is also the Fibonacci sequence. What's something else that you see in this photo? So we talked about her placement is within the golden ratio and rule of thirds. What about the color in this image?
I also think it's contrast.
Contrast, yes. Because there's a lot. She is all wearing like very dark clothes, once again, on a white background. And then, so we know that that's contrast. What about all this right here? Empty space, or starts with an N, negative space. So the negative space adds interest to this because this is a large composition and it brings your eye back down to here, right? We're telling people where we want them to look in our image. What about this one? Billy, what's this one? Framing, right? This little boy's crawling out of the tree. There's another one someone else mentioned in the last class. We'll see if you guess it. Does anybody else have another one that's not framing? Perspective, good job, that's 2 classes in a row. Perspective, so we know that to have perspective, anything 3D can technically have a perspective, but to have perspective be part of the composition, it has to be something very prominent. And with this, we know that our vanishing point is somewhere back behind this boy, right? Because we're pointing into it. And you can see that these lines follow and point towards that vanishing point. And because you can see that happening throughout the image, you can also use perspective for this. It also creates depth. Makes it look like this kid is just crawling out of an abyss, right? Never catch me in a tree, but this kid's having a good time. What about this one? This one's interesting, and I have an interesting twist on this one. Yes? Rhythm, repetition and rhythm. So you have the same element repeating all the way down and even in the back wall. Yes? For sure leading lines. We got some very strong lines happening here in both directions. Yeah?
Contrast.
Contrast again. Now here's one for contrast that y'all probably didn't think about. So obviously when we think about contrast, you're probably looking at the dark of her dress versus the white, right? Let's think about this. There's other ways to contrast things. Does anybody know what this is they're standing next to? No? This is a mailbox. This is a mailbox, and probably like an apartment complex. It could be at a, yes?
So like most like little kids wouldn't normally use mailboxes.
Yeah.
Maybe it could be like
Yes, you're on the right track. So, but this is also a very old mailbox, right? This is an old style. Nowadays you walk in and you click a button and things open. This you have to put in a key or a code. So these type of mailboxes are well over 100 years old. A lot of times. And you'll see them in big cities or post offices. And Jasmine, yeah, and Jasmine's correct. These little girls probably wouldn't normally be using the mailbox. So you have a very old mailbox system in a black and white photo that feels old. It feels timeless. And then you have very young, obviously modern girls using this old system. So there's a juxtaposition or contrast between old and new. Very good, Jasmine. Very, very good. Which is another way that you can look at composition. It doesn't have to be contrast as in the colors. It can be contrast as in old and new, soft and hard, smooth and rough, those type of things, right? So that's also called juxtaposition. What about this one?
Flower.
What?
Flower.
It is a flower, you're right. Yeah?
I'm also going to say contrast for this one again.
That's okay. Some of these, contrast is kind of like color theory. It can kind of be sprinkled on everything. So contrast, why?
Because the flower is pretty bright.
Uh-huh.
But then but then like the background is like dark green.
Exactly. Now there's something else. I said that the flower is supposed to be perfectly in focus, right? So when the flower is perfectly in focus and the background is out of focus, does that create another level of contrast? I think so. I think it creates a really nice contrast because you still have all of this lovely color that's in the background, but nothing is distracting you from the real point of view, right? What about our doggo on the bridge? Hi, welcome back. What about our doggo on the bridge, huh? Yes.
leading lines again.
Yep, leading lines. You'll notice a pattern. There are some very strong compositional rules that work really well, right? Yeah, what else you got, Jasmine?
This one I was only focusing on the dog, but it could also be contrast because of like the black eye, the nose, and a little bit in the ears and his paws. Based on
Yeah.
the white hair.
I think you could make an argument for that, sure. So she's saying the contrast between his nose and his eyes, because he's a white dog with these black features, that could also be contrast. I would say it would be stronger if he was more zoomed in. But I see where you're going with that, and you can make an argument for that. Is there another one on here that this could be? Yes? Asymmetry? So if I were to draw a line here, or are you talking about here? Up, like vertically? So, okay. So she's talking about the bright colors over here. That does pull your eye up there, yes? It's not quite framing. It's close though. You have it kind of on three sides. I prefer it usually to be on top, because I don't usually count the ground as framing, because everybody has to stay on the ground. So yes, that's a good one. This is asymmetrical because this house up here kind of throws your eye in that direction, right? Also, if you look down here, this poor sweet doggo has his little paw sticking out right here, and his little toe beans are dark, so there's another contrast, and it kind of pulls your eye to his little paw, right? So overall, it's almost symmetrical, but not quite. And of course, this amazing perspective, which is another one that it is, this amazing perspective really adds some incredible tension to this picture. I would never be caught dead on this bridge, but you know what? That's okay. This dog is having the best day of his life. What about this one? Yes?
I'm also going to say contrast.
Contrast again. So this is a really big contrast. Is there another one that this could be?
Also negative space, because if like the hills in the background were too strong, your focus wouldn't be entirely on the tree.
Negative space as well, correct. Brenda, what did you have? The golden spiral? It's pretty close actually to the golden spiral. It's a little over. I would say it's probably closer to rule of thirds, but I'll take it. Because this kind of lands, if you were to draw it, if you were to draw your thirds, if it will select the pin. There we go. If you were to draw your thirds, the tree kind of is almost like right on that. So it's kind of rule of thirds. You could crop it to be rule of thirds, or you could crop it also to be the Fibonacci sequence. One of the great things, and we'll talk about this when we get to aspect ratio, but one of the things that's really nice about having a lot of this negative space around photos is you can crop it for whatever medium you need. Aspect ratio determines what size your image is going to be and how tall and how long it is. If you end up just taking a picture of just the tree, there's not really much that you can crop out of it, right? But if you take all of this, if you need to crop it and get rid of all of this, it's still a good image, right? So it's just longer. Or if you need to make it long and you need to get rid of all of this, it's still a good image. One of the things that photographers say is the most important is when you are taking images, consider aspect ratio. We'll talk about it later, but having this negative space helps. So a lot of contrast, a lot of negative space is okay to have in compositions. Wonderful, guys. So now we're going to get into the fun stuff. Cameras. So we are about to start our photography series, and we are going to be getting a little bit into photography this year. We're going to be getting more into photography next year. So next year, we're going to be doing a whole bunch with it. This year, we're going to be kind of dabbling in it a little bit because it's about, year one is about getting you a little bit of everything, right? So that you can kind of feel out and see if you want to continue down this path. This is the only camera that I have currently. Now, I will be talking to the principal, and I'm going to get y'all permission to use your cell phones in class for certain days. If you don't have a cell phone, please come see me. You don't have to tell me like right now, but you can tell me later. Let me know if you don't have access to a cell phone. We'll figure something out, maybe let you work in a group with somebody. I will give you an opportunity to use this camera. I have a friend, y'all remember Amanda, who we looked at her portfolio? She is donating a camera lens to me. She's also letting me borrow a bunch of her lights, like 2 of her like stand lights, to be able to set up a little photography studio over here. I'm also going to get like a green screen, and we'll have a place for y'all to take pictures. I have some ideas for a couple of different projects I want y'all to do with the photography and using Photoshop. But today, we're going to be talking about some of the most important parts of using this particular camera. Has anybody heard the term point and shoot? So a point and shoot camera is a camera that you literally just pick up and shoot a picture, right? Just pick, boom, that's it. This camera is a little bit different.
Can I try it?
I'm gonna let everybody have a chance to hold it. But this camera is different. First of all, this camera is like 5 times the cost of a little, camera that you throw in your purse. So this is more of a professional camera. It also has a lot of different settings and has a lot of different like bells and whistles on it. I mean, this turns in 2 different places, right? So I want y'all to take care of this. Talk about our safety. This is a lens cap, right? Oop. And I'm gonna drop it. The lens cap is fine to drop, guys, it's okay. Don't break it though. But you see these little pieces, when I squish this, the pieces kind of come together? You pinch those in the middle and you place it on top of the lens, let it go, and then check to see if it's secured. It should pop into place. Whenever you are not actively using the camera, your lens cap should be on, all right? If this falls and breaks, the lenses are more important than any piece on the camera. Now this one is a reasonable price, but there are some lenses that are tens of thousands of dollars. Will I ever get those for my class? We'll see. But for now, treat this as if it was more expensive than the computer in front of you, okay? That's what we need to do. So you take it off, you can look at it. Don't put your grubby fingerprints on the lens. What happens when you put fingerprints on your glasses lens? What happens? They get blurry. You can clean it, but you have to clean it with certain things. Like you can't just clean it with your shirt because you can scratch the lens. I'm gonna drop that twice. Ugh. Right? Also another thing you can do, and I'm kind of doing it here, I'm like wrapping this around my hand. That way if this were to fall, or I'm gonna like put this around my neck if I'm shooting with it, so that if it were to fall, I catch it, yes?
I gotta go.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Make sure to sign out. So, I'm gonna hold on to this for just a minute so that I can show y'all a few things with it and show y'all a few things that I want y'all to look at. How do you sign out? Once we get through like the first slide or so, I'll start handing this around. All right, so for starters, how many of you play video games? Raise your hand. I know a lot of y'all do. How many of you have played something like Mortal Kombat? I've played Mortal Kombat. I've played games. It's a, huh? Fortnite, Mortal Kombat. I used to play a game called Dragon Ball Z, Budokai, 1, 2, 3, all those things. So those games, basically you clicked a bunch of buttons and you had to like make combos, right? Like if you hit square, square, triangle, circle, X, it would do like a final move, right? And with that, you had a lot of people who learned how to use those combos and remembered them, but you had people called button mashers. Has anybody played with a button masher before? Are you a button masher? I will admit I am guilty of button mashing. How many times do you win as a button masher? Decent amount of times if you're playing somebody that doesn't know what they're doing, right? If you play somebody that knows what they're doing, you can't compete, right? So in order, if you were to just button mash this, do you think you would come up with a good image every time? No, you'd probably every 10 photos or so, you might come up with a good one, but you're not gonna get one every time. Hey, I need y'all to get up. I need y'all to get up. Stop sleeping, please. So we want to keep from button mashing, okay? So because we want to know what we're doing, we're gonna learn terms first. So before we go out into the real world and start taking pictures, we're gonna learn our terms. All right, so aperture. When I'm talking about photography, I am going to be talking a lot about the eye, because the eye is really important, right? When we're talking about a lens and a camera, put your phone away. When we're talking about a lens and a camera, it captures images a lot like your eye does. We're talking about light coming into the lens. We're talking about the camera being the brain to be able to, come on, sit up, you're gonna miss out on this. We're talking about the brain being able to take the information and interpret it. The camera itself is the brain, right? So the aperture is like your pupil. What happens when your pupil, has anybody ever gone, I know a few of you have glasses. What happens when you go to the eye doctor and they need to check inside your eye? What do?
They either do the one where they shoot wind in your eye, or press your eye up against like this big camera thing.
Yeah.
And you have to stare with your eye open, and then all of a sudden you'll see a flash of bright green light, and you'll be a little
Disoriented? But what do they do before that to make sure that they can actually get inside your eye? They dilate them.
I'm not able to go because the teacher's not there.
Okay. They dilate your eyes. And dilation means they get bigger, right? So your pupils will get really big. If you have darker eyes, it's harder to see. But on someone like eyes that has eyes like mine, where I have kind of lighter eyes, if I were to come in with my eyes dilated, y'all would think I was crazy. Because I'd look like something out of a horror film, because all you see is like giant pupils, right? What that does, your pupils dilate and get bigger naturally in the dark. So it allows more light to come into your eye. If your pupil, in more light, your pupils get smaller, which means that it's letting less light in. You can see it really prominently in cats, because cats have amazing night vision. Their eyes go almost completely black at night, and during the day, their eyes are little slits, right? Same thing. Your pupil is your aperture. When you're looking at the camera, I want y'all to take a look, zoom all the way out to 45, and you can actually see the aperture in here, right? It's pretty small right now because it's set to a pretty low aperture, but you can see it zoom in and zoom out. Now, if you're looking over here, I'm gonna go ahead and make sure it's turned on. There is what I like to call the on/off switch. It's very important to know where it is. It's on/off. And then here, if you want to look through any pictures that have been taken, you can look through here, okay? So, I'm gonna pass this around. Jaden, do you wanna be the first to look at it? So, you may have missed this, but you're gonna clippy clip here and snap it into place here. And then you can look at it, okay? When you're done, pass it to Carla. Yes?
Is there batteries in there?
There is batteries in there.
Okay.
I need you to be back on the Nearpod. Thank you. Where's the Nearpod? Okay, so the Nearpod is gonna be on Clever. Yes?
If I wanted to invest in a camera like that, like on my own, how much is that camera?
So that one is going to be, Carla, do you want a chance to look at it?
Give us the card now. She just like,
You go. So that one, you're looking at $500 to $900, depending, which is not bad for a camera, because that came with the lens, came with the strap. It didn't come with a bag or anything like that, but it came with everything but it didn't come with an SD card, and it didn't come with a bag, or there was something else I had to buy for it. I can't remember. Yes?
I want to get back when I was on.
Okay, so it's going to be VQFE5. VQFE5. All right, so when you're opening up the camera lens, there is something called f-stops. It is aperture, y'all need to pay attention to this. Aperture is measured in f-stops, right? So you're going to look at either like 2.84 or 5.6. The larger the number, the smaller the aperture opening, right? So the next one we're going to talk about is shutter speed. Shutter speed is crazy important, but especially if you're trying to do anything that's moving, right? If you're trying to capture any kind of movement, because we're not videographers, right? We can capture movement, but we have to do it in a very controlled way, because what we're doing with photography is still images. So shutter speed is kind of like blinking. When the shutter opens, it is taking in information just like you're taking in information with your eyes. If your eyes close, you stop taking in information, right? So the shutter is a lot like your eyelids. When the aperture and the shutter opens to let light into the aperture, the picture is being taken, and it's not done being taken until it closes again. all right? So it's gonna open and then it's gonna close. Depending on how long the shutter is open for determines how much light hits the back. Now, with something like this, if you were taking a picture of someone walking, I'm gonna walk at a pace like this. So 1 second is 1 Mississippi, right? So 1 Mississippi. How many steps do I take in 1 Mississippi? Like 1.5 maybe? If I have a 1 second shutter speed, that doesn't seem like a lot, but if you're taking a picture of somebody walking, what are you gonna see at their feet? Movement. You're gonna see blurriness at the bottom, which isn't a bad thing if that's what you want, but if you want a clear image, you have to lower the shutter speed so that the shutter speed takes an image right as I'm walking. What if you're taking a picture of someone who's playing a sport, someone who's running, someone who's moving around a lot, very fast? Do you think you need to have an even lower shutter speed? Quicker? So that it's just boom, really quick? Exactly. Take the bubble, for instance. How many of you have watched a bubble pop from start to finish? You've actually seen it with your naked eye? Without being in slow motion? I don't think anybody has. I know I haven't. Now, huh?
Can digital camera record that like a photo in slow motion?
I don't know if that one can record in slow motion. It's not a slow-mo camera. It might have a function for it, but I'm not sure. So cameras, if you have the shutter speed fast enough, you can actually take pictures like this, where you can catch a bubble in mid-pop, right? This would also be really good for sports, obviously. Billy, find a seat and get back in it. Now down here, what's the difference down here? You see those kind of ghost lights. Do y'all know what that is? What is it? Yeah, so that's traffic. Those are cars. So yeah, you're right. Jaden, I need you to get up because you're gonna ask what's going on later, okay? All right, so next person. So the traffic, right? So you had somebody posting up kind of in the middle of a road, and they took what's called a long exposure of the traffic that's driving by, right? So the traffic is driving in both directions, and that was probably open for maybe like a minute, minute and a half or something, maybe upwards of 5 minutes to get all of those cars driving by. And you notice the buildings in the background, because those were stationary, look crisper, right? And of course the lines of the cars, those feel a lot more blurred because they weren't given as much to the exposure. Now, what is the downside to something like this? What do you think you have to do to capture an image like this? There's one of them in the room right now. If I were to set my shutter speed to 5 minutes, and I'm gonna hold the camera for 5 minutes like this, what happens after a while? After about 30 seconds, does that camera start to get pretty heavy? And do you think if your hand's moving like this, you're gonna get a crisp, clean image like this over time? Probably not. So this type of image, when we talk about planning your images before you start taking them, this is one of them. If you decide on the spot that you want to take a long exposure photo, and this is the only time you're going to be able to take it, your arms are going to hurt, and you might not even get the photo. You need to bring a tripod. You need to make sure that it's a time when maybe people aren't going to walk in front of your frame. Would New Year's Eve in Times Square be a good time to take this photo? Probably not. Maybe a random Tuesday in a city, a smaller city, a Tuesday evening might be a little bit better because there's going to be less people out and about, right? You have to plan these things. All right, so what I want you guys to do in the Nearpod, I want you to take these photos and pull them over and tell me if it was a fast shutter speed or a slow shutter speed. I'll give y'all a few minutes to do it, huh? Unfortunately, there's not. Just look and see. Remember that anything that's a little blurry is probably going to be slow. Yes, sir. You don't know what fast and slow shutter speed is? You were here when I talked about it the whole time. So shutter speed is going to be the shutter of the camera opens and allows light into the camera. It starts basically recording the image, right? The longer that the shutter is open, the more information it takes in. You can think of the shutter like your eyes. The moment your eyes close, you stop recording, right? So if you open the aperture and you're taking one photo and people are moving all around in front, do you think it actually captures all of that movement? It does, but it's blurry, right? Because it can't hone in and get detail. Whereas if you have a super fast shutter speed, you can take images of things that are moving pretty quickly, right? So what images on there do you think required a fast shutter speed? There you go. Easy. So that's a golfer. That's a golf swing. But do you see how it's shadowed? So do you think that's a fast or slow shutter speed? There you go. Ooh. There. Yeah. There you go. Good job. It's traffic. So you're missing just the glass. So that, there you go. Perfect. All right, does anybody else need more time?
It's all good.
I have an answer. Huh? I have an answer for a lot of things, okay?
Am I doing this right?
I'd say you're pretty close. All right. Y'all ready? So the answer is shattering glass, fast shutter speed. Surfer, what do y'all have for that? Fast. What about the NFL players? Fast. What about the traffic? Slow. Exactly. You want to make sure that you're taking pictures of those different lights. What about the sparkler? Slow. Because she's swinging the sparkler like this, and if you did a fast shutter speed, it would be like the NFL player where you'd catch her here or here, and you might see the sparks flying off of it, but it wouldn't be that full circle, right? What about the runner, the track star? Slow, because it's blurry. Either it's slow or someone moved while they were taking the image. That's another thing you can do to create an action shot, is you be an action yourself. My uncle's really good at that. He loves taking photos where he moves the camera right at the end. I'm joking, they're terrible images. So what about the golfer? Yep, that's a golf swing. What do y'all think that one was? Slow?
Slow.
Definitely slow. And then what about the girl with the aerial hair? Fast. Because you can see all the water droplets, right? And gravity would take over pretty quickly. Good job, guys. All right, ISO. We're talking a lot about lighting today. And ISO is like your actual retina, right? We've talked about the aperture being your pupil, the shutter being your eyelid, and the ISO is like your retina in the back of your eye. The retina in the back of your eye detects light, different colors and all that lighting and stuff, and then your brain interprets it into an image. So what happens, let's say for a second, you guys, it's 3 a.m., you're snuggled in your covers, it's a beautiful evening, you just are dreaming about what you're gonna do over Thanksgiving break, and then your mom comes in and flips on the big light. What happens to your eyes? Oh, it hurts. Why? Because your pupils are dilated, the big light comes on, and 9 times out of 10, you're looking right at it. And it hurts, right? So you're getting too much light into the back of your eye. You would say that your eyes are overexposed to light. Then what happens when somebody turns the light off after you've been you're like, I can't see anything. So you need to lower, your eyes were used to seeing a lot of light, so it turned down its sensitivity. And then when you turn off the lights, it has to raise its sensitivity to light so that you can see more, right? Here, if it's bright outside, you don't need a high ISO. You don't need a high sensitivity because there's a lot of light. If you are outside at night, you need a higher ISO because you need more light sensitivity to be able to pull all of that in. Now there is some give and take with high and low ISO. If you have a really high ISO, you might start to get grainy images, but it's worth it if you need to try to get the right shot. Now, this is also something important if you're planning on shooting images at like a sports event, because sometimes a sporting event will start during the day and end at night. And if you're doing video, you kind of have to adjust it a little bit as you go, adjust the ISO to the lighting as it goes down. But especially if you're a photographer, if you start with the same ISO at the beginning of the night as the end of the night, your image's quality is going to go down fast. As the sun goes down, you need to reevaluate how your ISO looks, right? With that in mind, if any of y'all ever want to go to a home game, doesn't matter what home game it is, and take images, I'll see what I can do to show up with my camera so that y'all can practice taking images.
I know we're probably going to be at some of the wrestling games and then the baseball games in the future, so I'd be willing to do that for you.
Oh no, this is if you want to. I'm doing this for you guys so that y'all can practice.
Well, then that would also help me because I need 8 hours.
That's perfect. Yeah, I can do that. If you want, I can show up with my camera. I can let y'all take some images and practice, because a lot of times you can't practice taking sports shots unless you're at a sporting event, right? So, with that in mind, all right, I have a short video for y'all to watch. This is important. This guy is a professional guys, look up here. This guy is a professional photographer. He's been one for a very long time. He's gonna go over basically everything that I just did, but almost better, all right? He makes it make a lot more sense. So let's listen to a professional photographer talk about these.
Is the delicate balance of shutter speed, aperture, and ISO. These are the camera settings that come together to emphasize an aesthetic, create a style, to make the image. Timing, depth of field, light sensitivity. All three are equally important. But in order to balance these camera settings, you must prioritize the exposure trinity in a way that best presents your subject. For the sake of
Let me get you a
simplicity,
pass.
we're going to show each individual camera setting and the way that it affects an image. First up, shutter speed. Shutter speed is the measured time of an image, the moment between the opening and
it's
the
in my
closing
pocket.
of the camera shutter. We've got Jake here in a very
I'm sorry it was so loud to start with. Some of my other classes are like really loud.
We need to use a very high or fast shutter speed.
So, like, during your classes,
But if we want to emphasize motion blur of the hair, we'll want to do just the opposite. A low or slow shutter speed will give us the opposite
like
effect.
get up in a little group and say like, hi, WLP. I could use that in the future when I'm
So the higher or faster the shutter speed, the more likely you'll be able to freeze action. The lower or slower
Yeah, I can definitely do that. I'll send you some of the funny images they take. They took a few today. There were some students over in the window, and we were using the lighting in the window to pose somebody who's wearing a suit today for the basketball game.
Nice portrait set up for Jake. By changing our aperture, we're able to specify how much of our lovely subject stays in focus. Shooting at a larger aperture like f2.8, the smaller the number, the larger the hole, creates a very narrow area of focus. Stopping the aperture down to say f20, the larger the number, the smaller the hole, gives us greater depth of field with more of the subject and background in focus. The larger the f-stop, the more shallow the depth of field. The smaller...
Oh, no, that's not. All right, I want to look at this. So f-stop is one of those things that is going to trip you up probably, because it trips me up a little bit, because the lower the f-stop, the more the aperture is open. The higher the f-stop, the tighter it is, the smaller it is. But you would think that the tighter it is, the less focus it would have, right? It's the opposite. the bigger the aperture or the smaller the number, the less focus you have. So you're going to focus more on one thing. The larger you have, the more focused your picture is going to be, okay? So what I want you to remember is lower f-stop, narrower focus. Higher f-stop, larger focus, okay? And then you can remember on top of that, that the actual opening is opposite. But the most important thing for you is lower f-stop, narrower focus, larger f-stop, larger area of focus, okay?
Shallow the depth of field. The smaller the aperture, the more overall focus in the image.
Yes.
Third, ISO.
It's okay, just write down what you can, write down what kind of, put your name on here, and y'all can share that one.
In a room with ample light. Shooting at a
Put your
low
name on it, too.
sensitivity, like ISO
Yeah.
200 should be fine here. Highlights
At the end of this, if we have
shot
time.
clean and virtually without
And I'm gonna need you to wash your hands. I don't want your little
So when
Cheeto
the
hands
lights
on
go
my
down,
camera.
We'll need to raise the sensitivity to make an exposure. Employing a higher ISO allows us to make photographs in this challenging scene, but it also introduces noise to the image, particularly in the mid-tone and shadow areas. So choose lower ISOs in bright or well-lit scenarios, and choose higher ISOs in dark or poorly lit situations. Shutter speed, aperture, ISO, all three are equally important, but you can only start with one. If you want to make a photograph of something fast-moving, you want to freeze the action, you need to shoot with a higher shutter speed. Aperture and ISO, they'll follow. If you'd like to make a photograph with a shallow depth of field, open your aperture up. Shutter speed and ISO, they come later. If you're in a dark situation, raise your ISO up, then set the aperture and shutter speed accordingly. For more on exposure photography and all things imaging, visit B&H. I'm photographer David Flores.
All right, so that is very important. That encompasses everything. Now, one of the things he talked about was exposure. When we talk about ISO, aperture, and shutter speed, all of those together equal your exposure, right? So if you have something that is underexposed, not properly exposed, but underexposed, it's going to be dark. You're going to lose information, because what it does, the shutter opens, takes in all of that information, closes, and then you can't go back unless you take multiple images. If you have an underexposed, or on the opposite end, an overexposed, where the white balance is out and it's too bright, you cannot fix that, right? You can try, but it cannot be fixed. I've had professional photographers who worked on my own wedding overexpose one of my favorite pictures that they took. They tried to fix it, and it's ruined forever, all right? You cannot get information back from a raw photo. You cannot add information in unless you add it in 1 pixel at a time yourself, okay? And then you're basically drawing, which you can do, but there's no amount of like adjusting anything to make it right, okay? So keep that in mind. Now, we have, thank you, we have about 4 minutes left or so before the bell rings. We do have a climb. You can, if you need to turn that off, you can. We do have a climb, but we don't have time to take it because we took more time during the review, and that's okay. If